You have multiple elk that have obvious signs of getting tangled in the fence. Can you imagine getting your antlers stuck in a fence, becoming helpless, and either slowly dying of starvation, dehydration, or actually having predators start to pick you apart because you can't defend yourself? I mean, this is the nightmare of our national seashore, and the justification for the continuation of these nightmarish conditions comes down to what? No, who is on the other side of the fence?
Well, commercial ranching is not supposed to be part of a national park. It's against all kinds of policies that the Park Service has. The reason we have it is that the Park Service did not have the money to acquire all the land they wanted in this national park. So there was this period where we were going to have ranching as a stopgap measure, 25 years to the life of the rancher, in order to make this transition for all parties concerned and make it easier for the county, make it easier for the ranchers themselves, and allow time for these funds to be accumulated. The problem has been that once these ranchers were there, they knew a sweet deal when they saw it. They're subsidized by the taxpayer, and industry that was dying, the dairy industry on California's coast, had this resurrection at the expense of the taxpayer. Once these folks are in there, they have become quite a potent political force. They've got people in farm bureaus on their side. They've got people in government on their side now, and they're persuasive, and they don't want to move. And we're at a verge of a situation where they'll be here forever, which was never the intent of this park.
For someone like you, whose history goes back to the creation of this seashore, how does this idea that ranching was always meant to be there sound to you?
Yes, I know that this wasn't true because I observed this process. As a kid, I watched my father and his colleagues at the Sierra Club and elsewhere fight for this park. I know what they wanted for it, and what the law says it's supposed to be. I also, just to verify my own memories, I've read the very good administrative history of the national park by Paul Sadin. It was commissioned by the Park Service and makes all these points. That it was never, none of the people who proposed this park in the beginning ever mentioned ranches as being a part of the park at all, permanent or not. They avoided talking about ranching because ranching was a problem in establishing this national park. Connie Worth, who later became the director of the Park Service and who was the first man to propose a park, at Point Reyes in 1935, never mentioned ranches. He said the whole point of this park was recreation for people and the diversity of wildlife in this park. He never mentioned ranching. Clem Miller, who was the author of the legislation, never mentioned ranching as something that was desirable. In fact, it was something that he had to overcome. It was an inherent problem on this land that had to be finessed. And it was never considered something that you're supposed to have in a national park. I think almost everybody knows what the purposes of a national park are, and they're not to have taxpayers subsidize private ranching on public land.
And what about this notion that it is thanks to the ranchers that the seashore even exists?
The ranchers, from the very beginning, opposed the park. Before they'd even seen the particulars of the park plan, they were against this national park. They lobbied against it on both coasts. They sent a delegation to Washington to argue, and they sent a delegation to the Board of Supervisors of Marin County, who immediately, sight unseen, agreed to oppose the park. So the ranchers from the very beginning were opposed to the park. Their argument that they were partners is false. They were dragged, kicking and screaming, to the table on this park. They formed an organization against the park, the West Marin Property Owners Association. A rancher formed this group to try to stop the park. So the idea that this was some kind of a partnership with the ranches is incorrect.
My name is Judd Howell. I'm a wildlife ecologist